once again are going to be talking with somebody, a very special guest, about something that is just a little bit different. Not a world that everybody's going to understand, and I'm excited to talk to her about it, hear what it's about, hear what they're doing, how it makes a difference, her passion. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring her in right now. Thank you for joining us. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Well, perfect. Well, welcome. First of all, thank you for your time. Appreciate you being here. I know you are a very busy person. Would you take just a moment, introduce yourself, let us know who you are, where you're from, all that good stuff.
Sure. My name is Claire Mcauliffe. I was born in Richmond, Virginia, and went to school in Virginia at James Madison University. And I have lived a little bit outside of DC, but have returned to Richmond and continue living there. I am a true millennial in that I have two jobs. I work as a youth director at a church, as well as the executive director for Sigma Alpha Omega Christian Sorority, which is a national college ministry for women in Greek life. And I sometimes find time to garden and hang out with my husband, at random times. So there's that too.
It's good that it's at least sometimes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll talk about the balance first of all, before we get into talking about the sorority and being the director of a national organization like this. Talk about the balance of really three different focuses: family life, church life, and then being the executive director of a national organization. What is that like?
It's becoming easier the longer I've been doing it, I will say. I also have the privilege of having an awesome boss at my church. Our senior pastor, Wynn Davis, has known me since I was a little one, and invited me back to the church when we moved back to Richmond in a leadership position. And so he's really flexible with my sorority work life.
Nice.
And we also help, my husband and I rotate through for the praise band. So on Sundays, occasionally, we'll do that as well. But he also knows that sometimes I have to travel for my other job on weekends, because that's when college kids can do trainings and things like that. So I know that I would not be able to do both of those jobs if it wasn't for my awesome boss, Wynn, who also refuses to be called my boss. He's like, no, we serve the same boss. So there's the Jesus boss. And also my husband, who I went from being a teacher and trying to balance that in and of itself is just really, really hard. Having over 100 kids in a high school where you're trying to educate them and give them a quality education, and coming from different reading levels and different backgrounds. And it's almost an impossible feat. So I came from that background. My master's is in teaching. I taught in a high school for about a year and a half. And then I tried the corporate world, and I didn't like that much either. And felt really, really strongly called to serve full-time in ministry. And my husband was really supportive at that time. It was not going to be paid pretty much anything. And we prayed about it, and we knew that the calling, this vocation, was something we just needed to listen to, and we were going to figure out the rest of it when we could. And it worked out. Now I'm employed in both ministries, and so I've been able to spin a lot of the plates. I do not have children as of right now, so I do not have that extra that plate. I know that plate's pretty much covered in spaghetti and being thrown around the room too. So I know that's an important plate. And so I haven't added that to the mix just yet, but it sometimes can feel very imbalanced. Sometimes the church and the sorority especially have the same kind of busy season. August, September, because that's when school starts, both for my middle school and high schoolers, as well as for our college kids. So that usually is the busy season. So and then at the end of the year as well, May, June, when my sorority has our annual convention, but also our graduates. We do a lot of stuff for our graduates at church. So that's really hard to balance when it gets to a busy season. Personal life, I think I've learned as I've gotten older to, that new hippie term of self-care. It is valid. It is important. I used to just be the yes person. I'd say yes, and I would burn myself out. And I've learned my limits, and I've learned, what kind of triggers that are going to make me not have a great next 48 hours health-wise, and not feeling good, and having a migraine or a stomach ache or whatever. So I've learned to kind of feel out those boundaries and learn to say no. And so, yeah, I mean, that's I'm working on balance. I think everybody is, but
well, and it's so easy to be balanced in the two jobs of being a youth minister and a nonprofit organizational leader, because you were just raking in the dough. I can imagine.
Clearly.
So that's always fun as well. But talking about the national organization, Sigma Alpha Omega, which again, full disclosure, my wife is on staff with you. She's a part of the organization as well, and that's kind of how we are connected. But I wanted to interview you, one, because I thought it was very self-serving to interview my own wife, but also because I was like, I want to talk to the boss. I don't want to talk to the peon who does the work.
No, I think your wife, she pulls quite the puppet strings as well. So
well, and she, before it was a paid position, she had your job once.
Yes.
So, I understand a little bit of that. But first of all, give us a little bit of background. Like when we first got together, Elizabeth and I didn't even know Greek life. I'm like, I remember the Bible was written partially in Greek. What is Greek life for those that are ignorant and do not know?
Yeah. Well, it is very distinctively American tradition. There are obviously secret societies all throughout the world and things like that. A lot of people are probably familiar with the Freemasons and think that that's what Greek life is, and that's not what it is. Just set the record straight. But it is a fraternal organization in that a bunch of people will find some ideals that they find or virtues that they want to pursue together, and get into a fellowship around that kind of that motto or that modus operandi, and they will come together. They will do activities and events that usually center around pursuing those ideals together. Most fraternities and sororities are obviously linked to college campuses. They might have social sororities and fraternities are usually just around those ideals. There are also Greek organizations that are around multicultural groups. There are some that are around academics, honor societies, things like that. But the true things that you might see on probably TV or in movies is a social sorority or fraternity. And over the years, the idea of coming together around ideals, whether that's service to others, whether that's pursuing excellence in academics, whatever it is that were the original ideals, have become eclipsed by a lot of poor decision making by college students, and this idea of a hierarchy, which mistreatment in the form of hazing and things like that. Obviously, that's something that fraternities and sororities on a national level do not endorse and do not want their groups to be doing. With SAO, or Sigma Alpha Omega, we're distinctive in that we find ourselves centered around being followers of Christ. We are interdenominational and non-denominational. So we have to learn what it really means to love one another as our neighbor, as sisters in Christ, it can be very difficult when we come from different backgrounds, different states, different denominations, and we all have different political views, and it's been very interesting over the years, especially as we expand into different areas of the country. But that is the one thing that binds us all together, is that we choose to abide in Christ, and that's what makes us distinctive. Our members are one of the things that makes us distinctive is that we do require a profession of faith, which on secular campuses can be somewhat complicated and misinterpreted as discriminatory. But we want our members to be confident in what we are pursuing together. We don't want someone to join just to join, which is certainly something a lot of college students might feel, to wear Greek letters and be a part of the ritual aspect. We really want our members to be focused on the purpose of our organization, and the ideals that surround it, which are all based on biblical principles. So that's what makes us a little bit different, but Greek Life is all around the U.S. and at different universities and colleges. And once you join during your 4 years of undergraduate study, or 5 for some, you generally become an alumni after graduation, and your membership continues for the rest of your life in a different form. So we get to be a part of both, as a national organization, both part of the collegiate experience as well as the alumni experience.
So first of all, I have to say I'm highly disappointed to find that Greek Life does not involve gyros and olives. That
I was too. I was swindled.
Because that was the only thing. Because you see, like when it's depicted in the movies, or my primary association with the concept of Greek Life was the episode of Saved by the Bell, where they have the toga party.
Yes.
All right, I'm like, oh, Greek Life, yeah, and that's not it at all. So I was a little bit let down when I discovered that. But talking about, and again, you're distinctive in that you're a Christian organization. We'll come back to that in a moment. But talking about as a whole, again, a lot of people have a very distinct impression of Greek Life and what it is and what it does because of, as you kind of alluded to, the news stories. Whenever something's bad, it gets talked about. But really, there's also, even within other organizations as well, there's a lot of community service that's going on. There's a lot of activism. There's a lot of those sorts of things as well. Talk a little bit about that part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that Greek Life has constantly been a part of is community service, and having that as a part of membership requirements even. So that's whether it's monitored through hours or events attended, that's something that's very important to Greek Life in general. Usually a Greek Life organization has an official philanthropy. Sigma Alpha Omega's is ovarian cancer awareness. So we spend a lot of our time, especially in September, which is Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, promoting education about the symptoms and signs of ovarian cancer, which is often misdiagnosed and misunderstood. And we also help to promote the encouragement and care of those who are currently fighting or have fought ovarian cancer. There's other organizations that have teamed up with a lot of different charities. I know Sigma Phi Lambda, which is also another Christian sorority, their philanthropy is World Vision. And so that's a humanitarian organization. There's tons of others, what we call Panhellenic organizations. I have 2 biological sisters, both of which are in Panhellenic sororities. And they have, literacy as their one of their philanthropies. I know that Ronald McDonald House is something that gets worked with a lot, Boys and Girls Clubs of America, all these different groups. And there are tons and tons and tons of hours that are spent across the United States with fraternities and sororities pouring into these charitable organizations. So that's definitely something that doesn't always make the news, because it's just, good people doing good things, generally not newsworthy. It's when someone slips up, the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. But that is definitely a pivotal, crucial part of Greek life, is giving back to the community,
Mm.
because leadership is almost synonymous with service.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to highlight this aspect of it as well, because again, a lot of people look at, the upcoming generation, and everybody knows, the children are our future and all this stuff. But a lot of adults, look at those youngins, and they're lazy, they're unmotivated, they're doing this, and they don't see, here they are, they're going to school, they're studying, and many of them are working jobs as well, and then they're serving as well, and that doesn't even include if they're involved in athletics, if they're involved in other extracurriculars, because this is a whole separate thing that is not really part of the school system, correct?
Right. Right. So most school systems, they will provide campus recognition to certain Greek organizations. They might have a Greek life office.
Mhm.
I know that for us in particular, because we're not a part of a national council, sometimes we are under just a regular student organization office. And some chapters we don't have recognition at all at the campus, which can be a little bit more difficult because you can't,
Mhm.
post flyers and things like that on the campus.
Mhm.
But yeah, this especially this Generation Z coming in and has been in college, they are learning new skills too. It's not just community service and trying to get plugged in with friends. A lot of it is learning and developing skills, leadership skills, conflict management skills, how to write an email. A lot of these kids, they don't have to write emails in high school, and learning how to do that, learning how to put on events and execute those events successfully. So there's a lot of opportunities that really force these young adults into a professional mindset, and can help them for whatever career they pursue. Just that maturation of skills is super important, and
Or
something that Greek life provides.
we hope it's a maturation. Again, I hear
Yeah.
sometimes some of the stories, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the human
Yes.
race is not going to survive if these are
I
the people,
know. The Darwin Awards.
but and I had a question out of that I wanted to ask. Oh, but they're also looking at, you talked about the leadership skills and things like that, but they're also like, you have meetings, there's rules and
Mhm.
order and process.
Yeah,
So I mean, they're learning those skills that carry over into the business world as well,
absolutely.
that a lot of times actually are not taught in the classes.
Yes. I mean, it is definitely an education all in and of it itself. Um, Not just relational things, but definitely procedural things.
Mm.
We do have bylaws, and they have to know how to make amendments. They have to know how to conduct those meetings. And we use Robert's Rules of Order, and that's kind of the typical, procedural approach to those kinds of meetings. We also have them learning just how to transition. For example, if they have a leadership role, they have to transition to the next person, because obviously the membership is very fluid because everyone's only there for about 4 or 5 years.
Mm.
So constantly trying to maintain that chapter legacy and health can be difficult. And so we have to also teach them almost as soon as they get a position to learn how to hand it down. And that's something that I think we especially, I'll give an example with when I was a teacher. It's very difficult when you're used to running the show and then you have to prepare substitute plans, and you're like, oh, what do I do every day? What are the things? Sometimes I write everything down and sometimes I don't. And so learning that how to hand off things to give good directions and instruction
Mhm.
is I think also a skill that's highlighted in just the very nature of being a fluid membership organization.
Mhm. Now, again, before we get into talking about your story a little bit and what Sigma Alpha Omega does, a couple of questions here, just curiosity. Is there a secret handshake?
If there is, I will never tell.
I love it. What other? So again, you mentioned people think of things like the Masons and all that, but are there certain aspects across Greek life, not necessarily specific to SAO, but
Mhm.
across Greek life that are very specific, like we do this? Because you hear words, and you used one of the most negative words that people would recognize, the word hazing,
Yes.
but there are other words out there that don't have that kind of negative connotation. Talk about some of those and what they are and what they mean.
Right, right. So the reason we call it Greek life is because a lot of the organizations use Greek letters. So, for example, Sigma, Alpha, and Omega, those are all part of the Greek alphabet. So you'll hear those, and if you don't have an understanding of Greek letters, you might be like, "What? What are those?" I mean, there's been many times where I've been on the phone with customer service, and they're like, "Can you say that again?" So if you don't have an understanding, or at least some kind of working knowledge of Greek letters, then you might be a little lost, even just me saying the name of our organization.
Mhm.
Some other things that are, very important is this ritual aspect, the ceremony aspect. And that is something that um, kind of unites members in that, you might be a chapter in New York or in a chapter in Colorado or in a chapter in Louisiana, but you all do the same initiation ceremony, or kind of like the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, and,
Mhm.
they'll have a bridging ceremony or things like that.
Mhm.
Ceremony is very important. Um, those are also at different levels of confidentiality and secrecy. So that might be kind of what some people think of with the secrecy and the secret handshakes and things like that. So that stuff's more just to bind members together on a shared experience, and also placing importance on the completion of certain classes. For example, to become a member, you have to take classes and learn about the organization, learn about the requirements and things like that when you're a regular active member. And so that experience is something that is shared throughout this chapters on a national level as well. But you might see some words, some terminology that is, like every field has their own jargon and their own terms. Paddles, for example. Paddles, you know what? I don't even know. Yeah, no, they're not disciplinary tools, I will assure you. Maybe they were in the beginning, I don't know. But because some fraternities and sororities are very old. So, school marms might, I don't know if an upperclassman was using them in some form of disciplinary action. They are not used that way anymore, I will assure you. But paddles are usually in a shape of an oar, and so like a paddle, and they're decorated, they're wooden, with the incoming class. Sometimes sororities and fraternities might have an individual member make their own paddle, and it's signed by a lot of the other brothers or sisters in the organization, just as a kind of emblem of their membership.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's just for the whole incoming class that's finished their classes and things like that. So
Mhm.
paddles, there might be some pins. So we have a sister pin and a candidate pin that we wear, and that just tells you if you're a membership in training, we have a candidate pin, so a candidate for membership, and the sister pin is an existing member. So our alumni as well as active members wear that, and so they look a little bit different. Um, yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of jargon that I know and use, and I'm so in the thick of it, I can't even think of it right now, but those are just a couple examples.
Again, one that I'll throw out there is I remember when Elizabeth and I were dating, and she started talking about her grand little.
Ah, yes.
You are 24 years old. What are you talking about? Grand what? Talk about this. And
Yeah.
so she had to explain, but again, I had no context. And
Hmm.
it took a little while to do, huh?
Yeah.
But then you basically get to understand that it's just further down the line in the classes is
Yes.
how
So
that.
it's like an embedded mentorship program. So when you become a new member in training or a candidate for membership, a existing member is called your big sister, or if you're in a fraternity, your big brother.
Mhm.
And they are supposed to help you and be an additional point of contact to answer a lot of your detailed questions, meet up with you, make you feel welcome, maybe shower you with some fun gifts and attention. And so that's the original design. And so when you do become an active member, you might also one day become a big sister or a big brother, and it goes on, so on and so forth. So yes, you can become a big sister, and then a grand big and a great grand big, and so on and so forth.
All right. So now let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about your story. How did you get connected with Sigma Alpha Omega? What are some significant things for you that after you've graduated and done some of these other things brought you back and said, I want to be a part of this again?
Yeah, well, I remember specifically my freshman year at James Madison University, I was feeling really disconnected. And I actually tried out for an all-female Christian a cappella group. And they became my closest friends, my biggest cheerleaders, um, and helped me develop in my faith so much.
Mhm.
And at the end of my freshman year, I'm sitting in my dorm, I'm packing up everything, and I think to myself, huh, well, it's a shame that, all of this awesome fellowship and discipleship that I've been receiving, um, just really isn't something I've found in, say, like a small group that I joined, which was more like just about Bible studies and hanging out and stuff.
Mhm.
It's a shame that there isn't like a Greek organization that's like this, because all the girls that audition for my a cappella group, if they can't sing, they can't join, and they might be some really awesome people that we could learn from, and also have a mutual benefit of iron sharpens iron kind of experience.
Mhm.
And so I'm sitting there and I said, well, maybe there are Greek organizations that are Christian. And I did a simple Google search. This was in 2007, I believe, 2007. Um, and I found out about Sigma Alpha Omega, and I decided then and there that I was going to spend my sophomore year trying to find other women at my campus who would be interested in founding a chapter of Sigma Alpha Omega at my campus.
So there
Um,
wasn't one in existence at your
Correct.
school.
Yes. So, in fact, there wasn't one at all in the state of Virginia. Our first chapter was at NC State, which is where your wife went, and experienced our sisterhood first. So, yeah, go back, right? So anyhow, I talked to some girls through the different ministries I was already involved in, and they talked to some other people, and so on and so forth. And we all met together at the library, and we decided that we were going to start this. And so we had to actually petition to our university, and it was a long process.
Mhm.
And by the time I was a junior, I was able to be initiated, having completed the founding process and been a candidate for membership. I became an active member, founding member. And so from that point, I got one full year, my senior year, as a full active sister, though I had been tirelessly working for it for the 2 previous years. And when I graduated, I said, "Ugh, I feel kind of robbed. I want to keep going." So I did. I applied to serve as a national volunteer. I was super interested. I had gone to a convention and met other Christian women in our organization from across the US. I was like, this is awesome. I'm not leaving. And just was so inspired. And your wife was president of the national organization at the time, and I just thought she was the coolest. And so I was like, I'm sticking around. And so from that point, I have never looked back. I have never left. So from that year, my freshman experience, SAO has been a part of my life in a very, very full way, and continues to gain momentum in my life. And so I served as a national volunteer, and then eventually became employed by Sigma Alpha Omega when that opportunity presented itself. And so, yeah, I've never looked back, and I just keep on trucking. I am, much to your wife's chagrin, I am the second placeholder for most conventions attended. Our first place is a girl out in California, and your wife unfortunately had a kid, and she lost her title to me. We were tied at one point. She, I razz her about that sometimes, but I have a feeling one day I might have a kid or something, and we'll be tied once again. So we'll see when that happens. But until then, I'm totally lording it over her.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So talk about the national standpoint of it. What do you do in terms of the national organization, since it's for the students that are on campus? Like,
Mhm.
what kind of support is there? What's going on that trickles down then to these campuses?
Now, are you talking my role specifically or the national organization?
Well, the board, but then your role as well.
Okay. Well, most of all, we're kind of the keepers of the information. So I had mentioned before, membership is very fluid at the chapter level, because members are 4 or 5 years max, as an active, and then they become alumni. And so a lot of the times we are the keepers of the information. In case there is a weak transition, or maybe there's all new officers one semester, we provide a lot of information to help them do their jobs and get the full experience of being an effective leader.
Mhm.
We also do a lot of the clerical administrative stuff. So insurance, we do certificates of insurance. We do our taxes. All the chapters are subsidiaries of the national organization, so we manage that as well. We also might provide national trainings throughout the year, um, whether that's in person, whether that's virtual, whether that's pre-recorded. We have all different kinds of levels of that leading support, especially in this era of COVID 19. We have been putting together a lot of resources that are centered around adaptations for kind of the way that certain events and activities were performed on campus before, how we can reimagine them and still make them super fun and meaningful for the membership, but obviously maintaining precautions that have to do with this virus. So that's been something we're really a support system. And so there's the National Board of Trustees, and then we have also national mentors, which work directly with assigned chapters and their officers, and they're kind of more the quick questions, and maybe they come and do a guest speaking at the chapter, whether leading in a devotional or helping them with recruitment, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
So a lot of the national board stuff is more administrative in nature and management, and
So now
we try to
you're
do all the
the
not fun stuff so that they can do the fun stuff.
oh, there you go. Yeah, that's usually what it means to be in charge.
Yeah,
So you're the executive director. Is that the title?
correct.
Okay. And so what do you executively direct? Do you just get to call people and be like, do this? What is that like on a day in, day out, week in, week out kind of basis?
Right, right. Well, we have a very interesting model in terms of our infrastructure, because we came from a board of trustees, which was the full governing body of the national organization, and it was 9 trustees, 9 volunteers that were elected to those positions on terms of 3 years. But then we started to phase in employees, and those employees were initially given a 5-year contract, which would then be reviewed, etc. And so my position has changed somewhat. I was a volunteer and I served as president, which morphed into this executive director position. So the board itself holds me accountable, and I also am charged with executively directing the board, and therefore empowering them to continue to direct the rest of the organization. But as far as our national priorities, making sure that certain initiatives are completed, that's going to fall into my purview. But yeah, I mean, there's times where we're still working it out as a newer organization, figuring out, is this something that goes to the executive director, or is this something that's an entire board decision?
Mhm.
So that's a very interesting growth pattern that we've had, and I'm learning, and wonderfully I work with really gracious people, and so we're trying to find and whittle that out, and obviously we can only do that through experience. So that has been, I hit my 5-year mark, and we're still learning that, and it's mostly because we're growing and all the new things like COVID, and and also just the racial reconciliation that our country needs. There was some questions of, does Claire have the power to just issue a statement on her own, or is that something that needs to be looked over by the board? So, those kinds of questions that come up, and you don't necessarily anticipate those until you're kind of put in those moments.
Mhm.
So yeah, I executively direct, but I'm also held accountable to a board of trustees to make sure that, collectively we are pursuing what SAO stands for.
So let me guess. You get to handle all the fun stuff, and by fun stuff, I mean all the problems. And other people get to actually do all the fun stuff, like help found the chapters and do the mentoring. And
Yeah, yeah.
Claire will take care of that. That's on fire. We'll let her deal with that.
Yeah. So when things get bad or need to be escalated, yeah, they'll usually wind up on my desk. But but yes, there's a
Now
lot
the
of
buck
preventative stuff
stops
I do
here.
as well. There's
Uh,
maintenance and prevention and
yeah.
not fires.
Oh goodness. So what is that like in the transition? Because you said that you're still new enough as a national organization. You are transitioning this, where not all of your board members are staff. There are still volunteers that are involved. So
Yeah.
what's the difference in who is responsible for what for somebody that is in a paid position, for instance, versus a volunteer position? What is the difference in expectations there?
Yeah. So I would say the most basic difference is the required hours that are logged each week for an employee. A
Mhm.
volunteer, the expectation is you're volunteering out of your own goodwill and care for this organization. You obviously care about what you're doing, and certain attendance is required of you. For example, our monthly meetings and checking email and things like that.
Mhm.
But in terms of being the gears pushing things through, that has been pushed on more to the employees. Before, our board was all volunteers, and we were kind of trying to do too much as people who had full-time jobs on top of trying to run a national organization. And so it was very clear that we needed employees, and we needed people who were going to be able to devote the time to do those things. And that was when I first when I had that conversation with my husband about, I'm really feeling called to just do this full time without pay, because they need it. We need it to expand and be able to eventually get to a place where we can have employees. And so, taking that leap of faith together was super important. And I think it was definitely God breathed, because I don't think we would be where we are if my husband and I weren't, if we hadn't been in that moment financially and emotionally available to do that. And I know that there's been so many sacrifices by all the other women who've served nationally to make things happen to get us to where we are today. But yeah, I think that uh, it's it's different to have employees and volunteers, but now we are able to relieve a lot of the volunteers' workload. We have 3 part-time employees, and so 6 trustees are still volunteer elected. And then we have mentors who spend hopefully even less time just kind of checking in on chapters and sending them reminders and encouragement and answering their questions when they have issues or things they don't know how to handle.
What you mentioned, you got involved in the program because you found out about it. It didn't exist on your campus at the time.
Mhm.
What is that process like when, getting out there, trying to get into a new campus, or if somebody says, "Hey, I'm here. I want to do this." What is that process like? What do they obviously don't give up your secret handshake, but what do you do? What do you go through to found a chapter?
So honestly, it looks different depending on the campus. Sometimes we have, very rarely, but we have done this. We will have a university contact us. Usually a religious institution that says, you know what, we really want to provide Greek life to our students, but we want it to have similar values and ideals that our school does.
Mhm.
So we've done that. We've successfully piloted those programs before, and we'll go to the camp, we'll visit the campus, send a representative, and kind of talk about who we are, get some applications of girls who would be interested in colonizing, is what we call it, colonizing, or starting off a chapter and founding it. And then they have to take certain classes, just like a new membership candidate would do at an established chapter. They have to take those classes on top of kind of some instructions on how to set up their chapter traditions, get a chapter EIN number, like a bank account. Potentially, if their campus wasn't the one that contacted us, maybe it's a group of women who, like in my experience, we came together and contacted SAO and said we want to bring it to our bring this organization to our campus. We had to not only do all those things, we had to get campus recognition. So we had to work with SAO, but we also had to work with our campus to get the opportunity to post those flyers or to use certain resources that afforded to all different types of student organizations. So it's a longer process. Usually it's a semester long, from start to finish. There are certain requirements that have to be done. I think it's a certain number of women that have to be able to do it. And they have to complete the classes. They have to do a retreat together, a service project together, and a fundraising event. I think I might be missing something else, but those are kind of the core things that have to be check before we will even come to the chapter to train them and give them their charter and perform the official ceremony and things like that. So it's usually a semester long, and they've got like a checklist that they got to get through and kind of form their chapter identity before they get their charter.
There's some work that goes into that, though.
There is.
Now, I do want to ask, because I am obviously the father of 2 daughters, fundraiser, that is not call dad, I need more money, right? Like they actually have to go do something. Ideally.
Yeah, so they can decide if they want this chapter fundraiser to, come back to the chapter, or it can be something to benefit our philanthropy or our official charitable foundation, whatever it may be. They can do a car wash. They can do a bake sale. They can do a restaurant night where you get, percentage of the sales that evening, whatever it may be. They just have to plan it out and execute it. Now, I will say there has been a couple letter campaigns written. So if you do receive a letter from one of your daughters in the future requesting a donation, that is a possibility. So I will say that.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Again, and you understand this doing youth ministry as well. In this kind of role, you get hit multiple times.
Yes, you do.
The church fundraisers, you get these, and then you still got the people that knock on your door selling the Girl Scout cookies, and it's like.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a teacher, a youth minister, and executive director all at one time, when I was insane, I got all the Girl Scout cookies, all of the cheesecake fundraisers, all of the wrapping paper, the popcorn.
You basically have to institute a policy that you either buy from no one or you buy from everyone.
Right.
Because otherwise you're going to cause division somewhere. All right. So now I want to shift gears, and I want you to talk about SAO. First of all, what does that mean? How did it come into existence? I know this, but people watching do not. Why? And what is the goal going forward? Like, where are you and the trustees, where are you guys wanting to take this organization in the future?
So SAO stands for Sigma Alpha Omega, and the Greek letters actually stand for Savior, which is obviously Jesus, and then Alpha Omega, as in God is the Alpha Omega, he is the beginning and the end, which Alpha and Omega are the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet. So that is the way we got our name. We actually were an offshoot of a co-ed Christian fraternity that decided that they wanted to split up and hopefully have success as a all-male fraternity and an all-female sorority. And that was at NC State.
Mhm.
And that was our alpha chapter. So in the Greek world, we name the chronological founding dates of chapters by the Greek letters. So alpha would be first, beta, etc. So from that point forward, that was in 1998. We have then, I believe there was 2001. But you can check the website. I know our chapter history is on there, but I believe it was in 2001 when the chapters all got together and they determined that a national organization was needed, to kind of unify the chapters, to make sure that everybody was doing the same rituals and ceremonies, and also that there was going to be some control and some protection over some of the chapters, in case their membership got really low. Other people could help. So that was when the National Board of Trustees was born, and then eventually we got into this infrastructure, which I mentioned before, of kind of mixing employees as well as volunteer elected officials and also our mentors. And so we continue to aggregate alumna, and they've continued to want to give back in some way. And so leadership opportunities are afforded to them, to kind of pour back into the organization that they love so much. And our eventual goal is, we just really want to be at a sustainable level. So right now we are, obviously with COVID and everything that's going on, our membership has taken a huge nosedive. And we know that this is a season, and we know that, we're really trusting that God's going to pull us through it, just I think like everybody else and like all the other Greek organizations. So we want to get to a sustainable point again. But our ultimate dream, I think, is that we want to have chapters in every state. We want to have chapters at both secular and religious schools. We want people to know who Sigma Alpha Omega is, and that we are known for our love for Christ and for others. We don't want fame for fame's sake. We want fame to make his name famous. We don't want to boast, but to boast in him. And so that's our ultimate goal. Ultimately, we want to create a sisterhood that is known for God, to make his name known. And so that's actually kind of a freeing feeling in knowing that. And one of the things that, like, when I took on this leadership position, I felt totally ill-equipped. And that was a blessing and a curse, because obviously when you're like, I don't know anything, you are just desperate to find out more. And so I learned a lot and educated myself a lot and spent some time, percolating on all that stuff. And I just ultimately prayerfully said, God, if you want me in this position, I'll be in it. I don't think I'm good enough to be in it, but I will try my best, and I will give you, whatever you're calling me to do. And if at any point you no longer want this organization to exist, it won't. It won't be something that I can control. It is something that, I will always give my best, and we will, as an organization, give our best. But if you are done with our purpose, this organization exists for him alone. And so if he is done, he has created, there's a time to build and there's a time to tear down. And if he wants to do that, it will be done. And so knowing that kind of freed me up a little bit to be more bold in my faith and more bold in my leadership. Because at the end of the day, it was like, you just have to have an attitude of humility that if God wants this to work, he'll make it work. We can't thwart his plans. We just have to be faithful. We just have to say yes when he is calling us. And if we say no, usually he'll just find somebody else. And so if he wants it to work, he's going to get it to work. And so that's been really freeing. And knowing that that's our true purpose, is to honor him and glorify him. And in any way that we can do that, that is a win for us. So while it's not a specific vision, and I'm sure, I could pull out our business plan and all that stuff, or all of our vision for the organization. But at the end of the day, that's the true purpose, is we want women at the college level to come into this organization, grow in their faith, and make him known on their campus and in their communities and for the rest of their lives,
Mhm.
wherever they go around the world.
Mhm. Awesome. Now, you said that you name the chapters after the letters of the Greek alphabet. What happens when you run out of letters?
You double up. So your wife was in the Alpha chapter, and then we got all the way down to Omega. And then in Virginia, when I started my colony, we became Alpha Alpha. We got to be the start of the next alphabet. So,
And that you just keep going, like you can triple up and
yeah.
quadruple up and infinity. So now, how many chapters are there that have been founded?
Founded, we have over 50, but right now we have 33 active chapters.
Okay.
And so those are ones that are actively recruiting. The inactive chapters are ones that, eventually they were founded, but eventually, either membership waned or potentially the campus kind of put the kibosh on it, or, they, for some reason or another, they just kind of fizzled out. So, which always happens. I mean, it's if you look at any Greek organization, you'll see that there's inactive as well as active chapters. The nice thing is, though, if there's an inactive chapter, we do post them on our website. And so if a girl from that college says, oh, hey, there used to be an SAO here, I want to start it back up again. It's usually a little bit easier of a process because they've already had a charter at one point. So yeah, over 50. So we're down to Beta Lambda was our most recent chapter. So we are in the third alphabet rotation.
Where again, it's a Christian sorority, but it's not just a Christian college ministry.
Right.
So where are some of the campuses? I don't expect you to name all 33 of them, but where are some of the places that you guys have chapters located?
Yeah, we have chapters that range from all over the U.S. and different campus sizes, as well as secular and religious. One of our biggest chapters is at the University of Georgia. They are a MU chapter, and they're one of the biggest. We also have a chapter at Appalachian State, and then University of Wisconsin-Madison. We have a chapter out in California, as well as in Texas. We had one in New York, Delaware, Virginia, Tennessee. I mean, we're kind of peppered all throughout. Michigan, we have 2 in Michigan. Michigan State, as well as University of Michigan. Friendly rivalry there. And so, yeah, it's been really interesting. It's not exclusive to, the Bible Belt. We're all over, and it's really great. I went to a secular college, and having this opportunity afforded to me was just tremendous. Obviously, just because, I was already a Christian, but I was looking for ways to keep my faith. I felt very much pressured when I went off to college to kind of conform to the pattern of this world, if you will, to conform to the kind of the party scene and the typical college life. But I didn't want that, and I was tempted by it, and I knew that if I didn't have a solid support system, not just back home, but in my new home, that if I didn't have that, I would fail. I would falter in my faith, and I didn't want that to happen. And so, I've also heard so many stories just from other sisters saying, if it hadn't been for SAO at my campus, or it hadn't been for Susie Q, who invited me to that recruitment event, I don't know if I would be where I am with Christ today and in a good place. And so hearing that is just amazing. It makes all of the not fun stuff worth it, because you're making something really cool happen and reaching people that really needed a support to walk together in this walk to pursue Christ. Because sometimes I explain it to other people, and like, sometimes SAO is really just a support group. It's a support group for people who choose the very difficult sometimes task of following Christ. we have to count the cost. And having a band of sisters helping you do that is invaluable.
Well, and I want to ask you about that too. So, traditionally we hear, especially from the Christian perspective, that colleges tend to be very liberal, maybe not as hospitable to certain viewpoints,
Mhm.
things like that. So, how do you balance that of going into an environment that may be in many ways anti everything that you as an organization stand for, and promote what you do, but in a way that doesn't reflect negatively on what you do?
Yeah. A lot of it, a lot of the kind of resistance, I guess, that sometimes secular campuses will give, usually are born out of really good intentions. Um, they want everyone at their campus to feel welcome and included. But sometimes when you become overly inclusive, you become exclusive. So, for example, our organization requires a profession of faith. And some campuses see that as discriminatory. But religion, in and of itself, a religious organization, is exclusionary. You have decided what your beliefs are.
Mm,
And if um, you know, become too pluralistic or too secular, you start to promote secularism over uh, uh, allowing for your students to express their beliefs.
mhm,
So the solution to that is what's known as religious and secular pluralism, which is allowing your students to profess whatever they wish to profess.
mhm,
So to say no to a student who's like, well, I believe this. Okay, well, you can't say that. That defeats the purpose of freedom of religion and assembly and speech. And so sometimes these campuses are very well intentioned, but they don't necessarily know that there's something called a religious exemption in many states. And religious exemption is basically what I just described, where a religious organization, in its very essence, is exclusionary because it excludes other belief systems by being a belief system in and of itself. And so a lot of campuses, once they learn that and see that it's perfectly legal to be a religious organization that has religious principles and requirements, they are much more inclined to be like, oh, okay, that's great. Very rarely have we come across a campus who has been hostile.
mhm,
We have some situations where they just don't want to allow that opportunity, or say, well, we'll allow you for your officers to have a profession of faith, but you have to be able to let just anybody in. And unfortunately, we've had in the past some not so great things happen because of that. We've had some chapters that have tried to let just anybody in, and that just didn't work very well.
mhm,
There was actually a conversion attempt by one of the members. She came in and she began inviting other people to her faith um, house of worship, and that was really difficult to address. There's been some issues where, like I mentioned before, sometimes people just want to be a part of something,
mhm,
and they want to wear Greek letters, and they will not hold the same values that we do, and so they might have some really poor decision making that reflects really badly on the rest of the organization.
mhm,
Um, but I mean, promoting who we are. Usually, if we don't get campus recognition and the girls are passionate enough, we will go forward with founding a chapter there. We just won't be affiliated with the university or college.
mhm,
And our hope is that the the organization will bring so much good that it will speak for itself, and
mhm,
that the college will see, after years of seeing the exposure of this organization doing good things, and being a great ambassador for their university, that they do want to provide campus recognition. And so that's definitely something that can happen. We've definitely had a lot of chapters start out without recognition, and then eventually get it and apply for it, once they can prove to their university that they're a really legit group and they really wanted to bring positive reputation to their campus.
mhm.
Um, So yeah, but I mean, it's definitely different with
Is it,
different campuses, especially where they are
right.
geographically.
Is it ever difficult to recruit into being a Christian organization, and get people, even if they are Christians, sometimes I would think, because of the environment or because they want to explore everything that's out there, and get people to say, this is who we are, this is what we believe, we want you to come and be a part. And kind of, how do you go about that? What are some things that you do, as an organization, to draw these young ladies in, to be a part of what you've got going on?
Yeah, well, it's definitely difficult because not only is Greek life a niche group on campus, you also have to whittle that down to just female because we're sorority, and then Christian females that are interested in Greek life. So, I mean, there's multiple layers there. So that group is quite the niche group. And so to find these women, we've had to get more and more creative over the years. A lot of stuff is done on social media now, with following different accounts of strangers on your campus that like the same things that you do, and follow the same accounts on your campus that you do to try to reach out, to get the word out. Before, it could just be a campus-wide chalking and everyone would see, oh, okay, there's a Christian sorority, and if you're interested in meeting them, you can come out on Monday at 8 p.m. And
Mhm.
that was just written in chalk on a sidewalk. um, Granted, we still use those methods, but a lot of the ways that we plug in and reach out have changed. One of the things that we are focusing on now, which is I'm super excited about, is we used to have a position on the national board that was the person who was kind of the point of contact for all of our colonies, and that group, that position was called expansion director or vice president of expansion, and that has been kind of compounded out so that we actually now have a vice president of colonies to focus on those colonies that have applied and are going through that process. But
Mhm.
now we have a vice president of expansion, and her job is going to not only help with recruitment at a campus, but start with younger women to know about SAO. So whether that means visiting churches and speaking into our ministry, whether that means writing letters to campuses that, campus ministries that would benefit from having Sigma Alpha Omega there,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. So our focus is also starting to be a little bit more aggressive, just so that we can get the word out, because there's so many times where I've talked to someone about SAO, and an adult my age, and they'll say, oh man, I would have loved to have had that. I had no idea that there was anything like that when I was in college. And
Mhm.
so I hate hearing that. I mean, I love hearing it because it means that they're really excited about what we do, but I'm like, oh man, a missed opportunity. And so I don't want that to happen. So I'm really excited for this expansion role, meeting churches where they are, to say, hey, look at what we're doing. This is one of the most pivotal parts in a person's faith, is during those years from 18 to 24, and when they decide, it's a make or break if I'm going to follow Jesus. And so we're here, we're meeting that need. We're at both secular and religious campuses, trying to make sure that women can get some deep roots in their faith, and really start to take ownership of that. And so I'm excited for what is going to be in store now that we have a whole person dedicated to just that initiative.
That's cool to go beyond the campus and say, okay, we're going to go into high schools if you can, or Christian schools specifically, because that's kind of
Yeah.
your target or whatever. That's a great idea. You talked about how many chapters you have. How many uh, sisters and alumni do you have in your organization at this point, since you were founded in 1998?
The last time I checked, and your wife will probably have a more accurate number because she is in charge of all of our memberships, and all of that data. But I know that there are more than 5,000, and at a typical year, we'll have around 800 to 1,000, depending on the
Mhm.
year, members that are active. So obviously, as we continue to grow and have more and more chapters, our growth rate has been on an upturn. The first few chapters, it would just be those chapters, and then you would turn out a few alumni, maybe like 100. But now, because we're getting so much bigger, we've got 5,000 plus members, and it's just
And
incredible to
and I
think
asked
about.
that question to point out the fact that, yes, you mentioned this as kind of a niche organization and a niche thing with Greek life, but it's not exactly small. I mean, 5,000
No.
alumni is not bad, not bad
Yeah.
at all.
And I mean, we're one of several other Christian sorority and fraternities. And so we know that there are people who want this and who have had this experience at their college and want others to have it as well. So it's definitely, I mean, I know I experienced it myself, that it compelled me enough to Google it and see all the different Christian organizations out there, and my heart settled on Sigma Alpha Omega. But we're not really competing. We're all in it for the same reason. We want to cultivate strong Christians that are at academia while also maintaining their identity in Christ.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What I wanted to go back to the founding real quick. The organization that you sprang out of, are they still in existence as well?
They're not. Chi Alpha Omega disbanded, I think, about 5 years ago. Sorry, I'm putting my charger in. About 5 years ago. But there are other fraternity groups that have kind of adopted us, so to speak, that have worked with us in several of our chapters, especially if they're at the same campus. Beta Upsilon Chi is one of those groups, as well as Alpha Gamma Omega. They're also another group that has worked with our sisters as well. So yeah, I mean, while Chi Alpha Omega I have a lot of their things. I was able to meet their last president at the Alpha chapter, which is actually their Beta chapter, I think. Their Chi Alpha Omega Beta chapter was where we were founded as SAO. So we were the Alpha chapter of Sigma Alpha Omega at the Beta chapter of Chi Alpha Omega. Their last president, I actually met up with him once, and met his family and all that stuff, and he passed over some things from their archives and things like that he said, we're kind of disbanded, and you guys, we're so excited that you guys are doing well, and we want you to hold on to these things, because it's not only a part of our history, it's part of yours. So I have those things, and it's pretty cool to have not only SAO history, but also the Chi Alpha Omega history as well.
Have you ever had any guys that have called up and been like, I want to join, I want to find a wife, I just want to be in an organization that's all girls, or anything like that? And how do you handle that? Did I lose you?
Yeah, I'm getting kind of glitchy here.
Oh, okay. Must be our signal to wrap up. But before we go, this idea of having guys try and infiltrate your women's organization, has that ever come up?
Yes, it has. In different ways, for sure.
We're a women's organization.
Yeah, we do have to toe the line. If not just for insurance purposes, because we have to claim that we're a female-only organization. So we don't have any kind of we don't even have an honorary membership for males. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely been parts where guys are just like, oh, I'm just totally in love with what you guys are doing, and I just want to support. Can I have some kind of honorary membership? And we're like, I'm sorry, no, but you could totally start guys Christian fraternity at the chapter.
Your women is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I could just imagine.
Yeah, support the woman. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, as we close down, is there anything else you'd like to say about your role, about your organization, about Greek life in general?
I think I would just say Sigma Alpha Omega has been so special to me, and I'm really glad that I was able to get involved with Greek life. My mom was in a sorority, as I mentioned. My other two sisters were in sororities, and I thought I was going to have to miss out.
Mhm.
I thought that Greek life wasn't for me. I was very intimidated by the party and the kind of elitism of some of the sororities on my campus, and I realized that God wanted to answer that in my heart, the longing to be a part of a sisterhood that does come around values and what it was, what I thought it could be and what the ideal of a sorority could be. And so I just, you know, if God has put something on your heart, and this is, beyond Greek life, beyond a career, beyond anything, God has put something on your heart, and you are humbly listening to Him. He will bring you to something that will make your heart sing. So if He's put it on your heart, it might not look exactly how you might think. Like, I never joined a Panhellenic sorority, and that's okay, because I found the sisterhood that was right for me, and it's something that has enriched my life so much, and has connected me with women that I never would have met otherwise, including your wife. And there's as much credit on the success of my career and my marriage, to them as as to SAO. So I think just kind of a life lesson that I've learned through all of this is,
Mhm.
um, God puts something on your heart and you listen and you look and you seek with all your heart, you will find it. And it may not be exactly what you envisioned, but he'll let you know when it's the right thing.
Absolutely. It really doesn't matter what your area is, if it's sports, if it's church, if it's
Mhm.
whatever. It's important to have people, right? And especially when you're in college, when you are figuring out a lot of things on your own, many times for the
Mhm.
first time, to
Mhm.
have people that are there for you, that are consistent, so important. But that's important throughout all of our lives as we go forward. But Claire, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing about what you do, about this great organization. I am bound and determined I am going to uncover the secret handshake before I go to my grave. Um, but
You just might have to find out at the pearly gates. I'm so sorry.
I have offered many times to dress up and come to convention, pretending Davina, hello,
I think the beard might give it away.
Mrs. Doubtfire thing going on, just because I'm like, I want to know. But it's really as much fun as this has been. It's really informative. And I think it's good for people to understand that Greek life is not just some weird party thing in
Yeah,
the
no.
college world. There's a lot of good going on. There's a lot of impact being made,
Yeah.
and that's important as well. But thank you.
And I
Before
think
we
I think it's also important to point out that
go,
our organization specifically, we're what's known as a dry organization. So there's never alcohol at our events. Um, Obviously, no drugs. And so that's something that I think a lot of people don't know, is that there are organizations that have a policy, and things like that. So,
well,
but yeah, in closing, I just want to thank you for allowing me this space to speak into what I do. It's really cool that you were interested enough to have me talk about it.
I've got to tell a real quick funny story. So I remember a point in time where Elizabeth, being on the board, like, she had to spend hours going through people's social media pages because people would tell on each other, and they would,
Uh,
and of course there's a lot of things when you're wearing the letters, if
sure.
and maybe I'm wrong, but the stance is, if you socially drink or you find that acceptable, that's fine, but you can't wear the letters, you can't do it at an official
Right.
function. and
And you
and
need to be of age.
well, yes, yes, that too. But she was like the Gestapo, like,
I
yeah,
know.
I see a letter there. I'm gonna have to send her a nasty message.
Yes.
Like, man, that's some serious stuff going on right there.
Yeah, yeah. We have to kind of
Is
pick our
important.
battles.
It is, but integrity is important. And if you
Yes,
if you don't maintain that consistency,
sure.
then kind of the whole thing unravels,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely something that is difficult part of the job is towing the line and making sure that we enforce the policies. But we have the policies because, and we're transparent about the policies from the get-go. So when our members don't follow those, it's, mostly like, hey, you knew what you were signing up for. So
And now it's just, well, we're going to call Claire because she's the executive director. We're going to let her put out the fires.
yes.
So, but again, thank you so much. And everybody, thanks for watching, tuning in, and hope that you enjoyed this, learned something, makes you think a little bit, and that you realize that there is still hope for this up and coming generation. We appreciate you joining us, and Claire, thank you once again. Have a great one.